The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when Alex fired up the drone for its evening flight. A seasoned photographer, he'd used the drone for months to capture aerial shots of the sprawling countryside around his home. His goal tonight was simple: an overhead view of the dense woods beyond the farmland, an untouched part of the land where few ventured. The drone's camera flickered to life as the whirring propellers kicked into gear, ascending into the deepening twilight. The landscape stretched out beneath him, a patchwork quilt of golden fields, dirt roads, and darkening tree lines. He guided the drone higher, capturing sweeping panoramic shots of the valley. As he guided it farther into the woods, the image on the monitor flickered. Just a glitch, he thought. Nothing too unusual, though the darkness was creeping in faster than expected. He steadied the drone, bringing it over the thick forest. Beneath the trees, the camera caught flashes of strange shadows. Not animal shapes or the sway of branches in the wind. These were something else, something unnatural. The drone's sensors hummed, adjusting to the dim light, but the shapes remained. Something caught in the underbrush, something out of place. Alex frowned. He zoomed in, focusing on one spot where the trees parted slightly. At first, there was nothing unusual about the image, a patch of bare earth littered with leaves. But then, something moved. A figure? No, it couldn't be. Too small, too still. Alex adjusted the controls, bringing the drone lower, its camera focusing on the shadow. It looked like a bundle of rags. No, a person hunched down, obscured by the undergrowth. Alex's hand hovered over the controls, hesitation settling in his stomach. He debated whether to bring the drone back, but the curiosity was too strong. He needed to know. He needed to understand what was in those woods. He pushed the drone closer, the wind from its rotors disturbing the foliage beneath. Then, it happened. The rags, the figure, shifted unnaturally, jerking upright in an impossible motion. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. It was as if it had been waiting for something, for someone. The camera captured a glimpse of a twisted face, distorted, contorted, and pale, like something not meant to be in the world. Alex's pulse quickened. His fingers shook as he fought the impulse to retreat. He zoomed out and pulled the drone higher, searching for the figure's surroundings. That's when he saw them, other shapes in the trees. Figures, watching, hidden within the darkness. More eyes, more movements, too quick to track. They were everywhere, like the woods themselves were alive with these things that shouldn't exist. The drone's camera crackled, struggling against the growing tension in the air. Alex had to get out of there. He needed to pull the drone back. But before he could react, the drone's feed suddenly cut out. The screen went black, and his heart skipped a beat. He jabbed at the controls, flipping switches, trying to regain the connection. Nothing. A few long seconds passed in silence. Then the feed returned. But it was different. The camera no longer showed the vast stretch of forest. Instead, the lens had zoomed in on something close, too close. The twisted figure from before was now right beneath the drone, staring directly into its lens with hollow, unblinking eyes. It was no longer just a shape in the dark. It was there, clear, unmistakable. Its face was a grotesque mask of hollow cheeks, wide, cracked lips, and eyes too large, reflecting the drone's dim light. It reached out, its hand trembling, skeletal, just inches from the camera. The drone trembled in the air, and Alex's grip tightened on the controller. What was happening? He tried to pull it back, but the drone didn't respond. It was as if the thing had taken control, pulling it deeper into the woods. The screen showed nothing but the underbrush, branches scratching against the drone's body. The figures in the trees moved again, closer now, creeping towards the camera like a nightmare unfolding in real time. Then, something truly horrific appeared on the screen. A face, a human face, but not one that Alex recognized. It was distorted, pale, slack in expression, and surrounded by those unnatural figures, standing motionless in the middle of the clearing. The face, his own face, gazed up at the drone. How could this be? The feed jolted, the image flickering again, and for a moment, the drone spun wildly. A cold sweat began to form on Alex's brow. What was happening? Had he crossed some boundary? The camera displayed flashes of static, intermittent images that were impossible to interpret. The drone's body jerked, then stabilized, its camera focusing once again on the figures gathered around the clearing. There was no time to escape. It was then that Alex noticed something more chilling, a new figure. At the edge of the clearing, half hidden in the darkness, stood something larger than the rest. The drone's camera zoomed in, despite his attempts to pull it back. The thing stood on two legs, tall, with arms that reached the ground like a beast. No, it wasn't a beast. It was something worse. A tall silhouette, wrapped in shadows, its features obscured by the creeping darkness. But it wasn't the darkness itself. It was something that absorbed the light, bending reality around it. The drone quivered, its camera flickering in and out as if trying to escape the scene. A single image flashed across the screen, clearer than all the others. It was Alex's face again, but this time it was twisted, grotesque, resembling the figures that surrounded him. The trees around the clearing seemed to pulse, as if alive with an ancient hunger. The darkness thickened, pressing in on the drone's small body. Then the screen flickered again. The feed went black. A few minutes passed before the connection was restored, but when it did, the view was different. The drone was no longer in the woods. It was hovering above the farmland, the very land where Alex had begun his flight. But the land wasn't as it had been before. The fields were empty, the sky unnaturally dark, the crops twisted in unnatural, impossible patterns. And there, in the center of the field, was the thing. The twisted, distorted version of Alex's face, now fully visible, staring up at the drone, surrounded by the other figures. The drone's camera slowly panned out, revealing that the entire field was now filled with these same twisted reflections, more faces, more figures, more movement, unfolding beneath the rot of the land. And as the camera zoomed out further, showing the empty expanse of farmland, the thing, the tall, shadowed figure, stood at the edge, staring into the distance, watching. Then, the feed cut out completely. In the following days, when Alex's neighbors went to check on his farm, they found only an empty house. The drone was recovered in the woods, its camera still intact, but the footage was corrupted beyond repair. There were no signs of struggle, no trace of Alex, just the eerie silence of the land. Some say they can still see the shadows moving among the trees at night, and that if you listen closely, you can hear the faint whirring of a drone's propellers.